I am excited to try out this screen from NothingProjector. They sent me this screen for review, and I am really looking forward to trying it out. Now, this particular screen is a long throw screen. So they do make screens that are specifically designed for like ultra short throw projectors. That is not this screen. This screen is designed specifically for standard or long throw projectors. Now, I'm going to be pairing this screen with my Valerion VisionMaster Pro2 laser projector. Now, this screen, it is an ambient light rejecting screen. So it has a gray finish on it. And the idea is that it rejects light that comes from the sides or above, etc. So I will be testing that on this screen. Now, there's three things that I'm actually specifically wanting to measure or critique on this screen. The first is how easy is it to put together? And the second is how well it rejects ambient light. I'll be using my wall sconces to test that. And then the third thing I want to check out is how well this screen minimizes laser speckle. Now, laser speckle is that issue that it bothers some people more than others. So it's kind of an individual thing. But basically what it is for ambient rejecting light screens, there's like a texture to the screen. And sometimes when the laser light hits those, it refracts a little bit and creates what people refer to as speckle. Now, NothingProjector, that's the name of the company, they claim that this screen minimizes that laser speckle. So that is the third thing that I am going to be testing, is to see how well it minimizes laser speckle. So let's get into putting this thing together. So this screen is 120-inch, 16:9 aspect ratio. It does have 0.8 gain. In addition to that, it is a 95% ambient light rejecting screen. Now this screen, this particular model, they do have three sizes. They have 100-inch, 120-inch, which is what I have, and then 130-inch. It is packaged well. It does have these reinforced cardboard corners, which is nice. Now, another thing to consider with this screen is that it has a 170-degree viewing angle. Sometimes with these screens, once you get very far off to the side, things become rather washed out. It will be interesting to see how it does in that regard as well. Something else that I'm interested in looking at and comparing is, with this being a gray screen compared to my white screen here. Now, oftentimes with a white screen, the colors can be kind of washed out, even in a fully light controlled room, which is what I have here. So I'm curious to see how it compares to my white screen. Now, my plan is, once I get this thing set up, now obviously it's smaller than I want in this room, so I'm not going to be permanently installing this screen in my room. However, my plan is to set it up in front of my existing screen so that I can do a side-by-side comparison. So we're going to be able to look at things like, how well does it reject the ambient light? You know, is it better at not creating washed out images? You know, that sort of thing. So this NothingProjector screen material, it actually has 6 layers. It has a PET plastic coating on the surface of it that acts as like a protector to protect it from being damaged. And then the other layers do things like obviously reflect light from the projector, the light that you want to reflect. But then it also has other layers that will reject ambient light, etc. And so it's kind of interesting. I'm curious to see how this fabric looks, knowing that it has 6 different layers. Now, I mentioned the gain on this screen is 0.8. You know, sometimes other screens, they'll try to add materials in there that boost the gain to create kind of a fake brightness. But the downside of that is, though, that they can create kind of hot spots and glare on the screen and have it be kind of washed out. So with this screen, like I say, the gain is 0.8. So we will see how it does. So I've got everything unpacked here. These are all of the pieces. This this seems like kind of a lot. I've put together a number of screens over the years, and this one seems to have quite a few pieces. So I am curious to see how it all comes together. Now, this screen, like I say, this is the 120 inch, and the price on this is $9.99. Obviously, the 100 inch is going to be a little bit less than that. I think it's $8.99. So I've got the frame assembled. I went around each of these corner points and using the bracket, just inserted that, and then you just tighten down the screws. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. The instructions do recommend that you connect all of the points together before you tighten down the screws, which I think that's probably a good idea. I didn't do that. It turned out all right, but if you're assembling this screen, just insert the ends all together into those brackets, and then once everything is assembled, then tighten down the screws. But it looks pretty good. Looks all right. So moving on to the screen. Now the screen, we'll roll this out, but they do include some gloves. So I've got some gloves here that I'm going to put on. That way you can avoid getting fingerprints on the screen. So this is a little bit confusing when it comes to the rods that go on the perimeter of the screen. So the rods that came with it, there are 6 rods, and there are 2 short ones and 4 long ones. And from what I can tell, the way you do this is the ends, and so you have 2 long ends of the screen and then the 2 short ends. The short ends use one long rod for the short end, and then the long ends use 1 short rod and 1 long rod, and that's how they go in. So it is a little confusing, but yeah, I think that's how it works. So I'm going to put the rods in, and we'll make sure that looks good. I got all of the fiberglass rods into the 4 sides of the fabric. One thing to take note of, one of the fiber rods, as I was inserting it, it did kind of splinter on the end. So do be aware that they can splinter, and just be careful to not get fiberglass splinters in your fingers. It might be worth wearing gloves. Now, they do send these cloth gloves, but this is to protect the screen from fingerprints and other stuff on your hands. It might be worthwhile to wear thicker gloves that would actually protect your fingers from getting fiberglass splinters. So that's one thing to consider. Another thing I've noticed as I am going around the screen to put in the rods, there is some outgassing from the fabric. It's probably from the vinyl. There is like I say, there's like 6 layers to this screen. So probably maybe this black vinyl that's on the very back of the screen, it has a little bit of a smell to it as I have gone around. Now I am kind of sensitive to that sort of thing, so this might not bother you, but if you are sensitive to outgassing smells from plastics or vinyls, that sort of thing, that is something to consider with this screen. The other thing to consider is there is a marker or a sticker on the corner that says up. So this screen must be oriented a specific way. So once I get it assembled onto the frame, I'll make sure that the up sticker is facing up. So the instructions are to do the 4, actually 8 corner springs first, and then proceed from there. So we'll start here. So we've got, let's see here. The way these springs hook is the instructions say to hook, let me make sure I get this right. Okay, so this hooks through the rod. The rod goes in there. it hooks around the rod, and then you have this tool, and it hooks around. There's a little hook or a little circle wire, and then you can pull it and hook it over the second rail. There's two rails here. There's one, and then there's two. So you hook it over the second one. So now we'll do the same thing on this section. First hook it there, then hook it around there, and then we go here. And that's it. Okay. Now you'll notice that the fabric actually folds around and hooks on the back of the frame. So when we installed this, I laid the fabric down, and then I laid the frame on top of the fabric, and then it folds around. So now I'll go do the other four corners, the other three corners, and then we'll proceed from there. So I've got the screen attached to the frame, and there's a couple things here. One, the frame does include these pieces right here, and these are the edge pieces that go around to kind of frame in the edge. And the purpose of that is obviously these things attach like so, and then they create a clean edge. So the way that these edge pieces attach is they actually attach on the back. There's screws that fit in on the back, and then the edge tucks in around the edge of the screen, and it looks like so. Now, I am not going to attach these right now. I'll do this later, but you can see kind of how it looks. Like it creates a nice clean edge. Now, there is something else I noticed after I got the fabric attached to the frame, and that is that because the fabric, the edges fold around and attach behind the frame, the issue is that you get some waviness in the fabric. I'm sure you can kind of see the different shadows. Yeah, not my shadow. But yeah, like right there, you can kind of see there is some waviness to the fabric. Now, I think if you kind of move the edges around and kind of massage it a little bit, you can get it to kind of straighten out. I'll give that a try off camera and see if I can get it to kind of even out. So I went around the edges and kind of tried to kind of adjust the rods, the fiberglass rods on the backside, and I couldn't really get it to even out. I think what I would need to do to really, if I really wanted to, if this were going to be a permanent fixture, if I were going to be installing this permanently, I think what I would do is individually remove the springs and kind of readjust them and kind of reposition the rod that way. But as it is, without readjusting the springs, it's kind of difficult to get it to smooth out. So that is kind of not great. I don't like how the fabric folds around the frame. Like my screen that I have here in my room, the way it attaches, it actually doesn't fold around the frame. It's attached with springs, but underneath the black velvet border, and then the spring is just right behind that, and so it's just perfect tension to stretch out the fabric. Whereas with this NothingProjector screen, it folds around the frame. If you can kind of see, it folds around the frame and then attaches on the back side. And because it folds or wraps around the frame, that creates kind of some tension, friction, that the springs are not really strong enough to overcome. That friction holds the fabric in place against the frame and prevents it from creating a perfectly flat surface. But again, I think if I just kind of went one by one and kind of removed the springs and kind of pulled the fabric tight by hand and then attach the spring, I think I could get it to go flat. Well, now that I've got it set up, I'm curious to see how it looks. So let's fire up the projector and see how the image looks compared to the white screen behind it. Well, I would say that's pretty obvious. Wow. Look at the difference on that screen. Okay, so this is just the home screen for my Zadoo player, right? So I have the sconces. Let me get that. So you can see I've got my sconces on. That's the only light that's on right now. But you can see that there's quite a bit of down in the corner right here. You can see, I mean, that's quite a bit of ambient light, a lot of washout, right? But look at the blacks on that Nothing Projector screen versus my other screen. Now you're probably wondering, okay, what screen do I have on the wall to begin with? That is a Dragonfly acoustically transparent screen. Now it doesn't have any ambient light rejection to it. It's just a basic white screen, but it is acoustically transparent. Whereas look at that screen. Oh my gosh, that is incredible. Okay, so now let's turn the lights off. I'm curious what it looks like with the lights off. Those blacks are just so much better on that Nothing Projector screen. Look at that. I don't know. I mean, is that coming through on the video? That is crazy. What a difference that is. Dang, I may need to get a new screen. So to me, the improvement is dramatic. This Nothing Projector screen is a dramatic improvement over the screen that I have right now currently. It looks great. Like the blacks, I mean, that is just like, I don't even need to pull up like a demo clip from a movie. I mean, just that home screen, you can see the difference, and what a difference it is. So I've got the sconces turned back on. So you can see there's 3 per wall. So there's 3 on that wall, and then there's 3 on this wall over here. So that is a pretty dramatic difference. Like, look at that. That's crazy. I mean, you talk about night and day difference. I mean, how do you get a better example than that of a night and day difference? That is incredible. So this screen would work quite well in a room where you have ambient light, like quite a bit of it. So this is the Nothing Projector screen. It's 120 inch, 16:9 aspect ratio. I've got it set up so you can compare the picture quality of this versus my Dragonfly screen behind it. So how does this screen compare, or how do I rate it on the 3 areas that I set out to evaluate it on? So the first is ease of assembly. This projector screen, it came together fairly easily. It wasn't too complicated. The instructions aren't super helpful, but it's actually pretty intuitive to actually put it together. You can just kind of look at it and be like, oh, okay, this goes here and that goes there, and this is how we do it. So it's not that hard to put together. I do have one complaint, and that is the design of how the fabric folds around the frame and attaches by spring on the back. I like the springs. That's how this Dragonfly screen is assembled, is by using springs to create tension. But because the fabric folds around on the Nothing Projector screen, it folds around and it creates tension against the frame, and it stops it from totally going flat. And so you can't really tell right now that there are little waves in the fabric, because now that you have an image projected on it, the waves actually kind of disappear. So it's not as big of a deal as I thought it was when I first put it together. When I first put it together and I saw the waves, I'm like, oh, That's not good. I'm going to have to do a lot of work to get those smoothed out, which I think they could be smoothed out. I think if you laid it down flat and then just individually removed the springs and kind of created tension and pulled on that fabric and kind of stretched it around that end of the frame and then attach the spring, I think you could get it to lay flat. But even as is, even without doing that, with an image projected on it, it looks pretty darn good. Those waves pretty much entirely disappear. The second thing that I wanted to rate it on is how well it rejects ambient light. And with that, I also wanted to rate it on how good it is at creating blacks. I think this image speaks for itself. When I set it up, I mean, it's obviously it's just leaning against the wall here, but I turned on the projector and immediately I'm like, wow, this is a stark difference. Now, I do have the sconces on right now, and that creates a lot of ambient light. And even with those sconces on, you can see how black it gets compared to my Dragonfly screen. Now, when I turn the lights completely off and the room goes completely dark, the difference decreases. However, you can still see a difference. There is still a difference. This Nothing Projector screen, the blacks, very nice, very nice. I am now reconsidering my choices, my life choices, in how I chose this white screen for this room. I chose a white screen because I'm like, oh, well, it's a totally dark room, so I don't really need to worry about ambient light. But the reality is that even in a completely 100% light controlled room, a white screen, it's just more washed out than a dark gray screen like this Nothing Projector screen. I mean, you can look at it, like you can see how good it is, and it probably actually looks better in person than it even does on video. So I rate this one very high on picture quality, blacks, and ambient light rejection. The third thing I wanted to measure it on is laser speckle. Now, I pulled up some other clips. You can't really see it. Laser speckle is something that doesn't really come through on video. So I had to sit back and I had to play some clips. I'm not really seeing any laser speckle. It does seem to actually do a really good job of minimizing that. It's a very, very flat screen, and so it doesn't really have any texture to it. And so the laser speckle, it's just not really an issue. So I rate this one very highly with regard to laser speckle. If that is something that bothers you, this screen might be good for you. So overall, I'm very impressed with this screen. The two things, my two areas of concern, as I've already mentioned, the tensioning system for creating a flat fabric. There's also the outgassing of the fabric. It does have a kind of a vinyl plastic smell to it. That may fade over time, my guess. If you have it in a room where you can open some windows, eventually that's going to, work its way out, and it will most likely not be an issue after a while. But when you first unbox it, I can definitely smell it, but I also acknowledge that I am a little overly sensitive to that sort of thing, so it might not bother you, but it is something to be aware of. So overall, I am very impressed with this screen, and I am now questioning I may need a new screen. I don't know that I'm going to be able to go back to the screen. I was very happy with this screen. I was very happy with this screen until I set this one up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it is stunningly better. This is crazy. So yeah, thanks for watching.